The crystal chandeliers sparkled like 1,000 tiny stars above the grand ballroom. Women in expensive gowns glided across the polished marble floor, their jewelry catching the light with every movement. Men in sharp black tuxedos stood in small groups, swirling wine in their glasses and talking about business deals worth millions. This was the kind of place where a single dinner plate cost more than most people earned in a week. Maya moved quietly between the tables, a silver tray balanced perfectly on her left hand. She'd learned that trick during her first month at the Rothmore Hotel 3 years ago. Back then, she'd dropped more plates than she cared to remember. Now, at 28, she could navigate through a crowded ballroom with her eyes practically closed. "Excuse me, miss. More champagne here." A woman with diamonds the size of grapes around her neck barely looked up as she spoke. "Of course, ma'am." Maya smiled politely and filled the glass, even though the woman never said thank you. She was used to it. In this world, servers were meant to be invisible. They appeared when needed and disappeared just as quickly. The annual charity gala was always the biggest event of the year at the Rothmore. 500 guests, each paying a small fortune to attend, all gathered to raise money for various causes while enjoying the finest food and entertainment the city had to offer. Maya had worked dozens of these events. She knew the routine by heart: smile, serve, stay quiet, and collect her paycheck at the end of the night. But tonight felt different somehow. Maybe it was the extra tension she noticed in the air. Or maybe it was because she'd been thinking more and more lately about how long she could keep doing this. 3 years of carrying trays and forcing smiles. 3 years of watching other people live the kind of life she once dreamed about. "Did you hear?" Another server, Jenny, whispered as they passed each other near the kitchen doors. "The pianist called in sick, like just now, 20 minutes before he's supposed to perform." Maya's heart skipped a beat. The piano. Her eyes drifted to the magnificent black Steinway sitting on the stage at the far end of the ballroom. It sat there under a spotlight, waiting. "Empty. What are they going to do?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Jenny shrugged. "No idea. James is freaking out, though. I heard him on the phone trying to find someone, anyone, who can play. Good luck with that on a Saturday night with zero notice." Maya nodded and hurried back to her section, but her mind was racing. She knew that piano. She knew it better than anyone in this room could possibly imagine. Every single key. Every tiny imperfection in its tone. The way the middle C stuck just slightly if you didn't hit it quite right. For the past 3 years, Maya had been coming to the hotel at 5 in the morning, 2 hours before her shift started. She'd slip into the empty ballroom when the security guard wasn't looking and play that piano. It was the only time she could really be herself. The only time she didn't have to be invisible. The piano had been her whole world once. She'd started lessons when she was 7 years old, practicing for hours every day after school. Her teacher said she had something special, real talent. The kind that only comes around once in a generation. By the time she was 18, she'd earned a full scholarship to one of the best music conservatories in the country. Those were supposed to be the best years of her life. And for a while they were. She was finally surrounded by people who understood her, who spoke the language of music the way she did. She practiced 8, sometimes 10 hours a day. Her fingers flew across the keys like they had minds of their own. She was good. Really good. But then her father got sick. Cancer. The medical bills piled up faster than her family could handle. Her mother worked 2 jobs, but it wasn't enough. Maya had to make a choice. Continue her dream, or help save her father's life. It wasn't really a choice at all. She left the conservatory at the end of her 2nd year. She took the first job she could find that paid decent money and had flexible hours so she could help take care of her dad. That job was at the Rothmore Hotel, carrying trays and smiling at people who never looked at her twice. Her father passed away 8 months later. The debt remained. Now 3 years after leaving school, Maya was still here, still serving, still invisible. But every morning, for those 2 precious hours before anyone else arrived, she played. She kept her skills sharp. She refused to let go of the one thing that made her feel alive. Attention, everyone. James, the event coordinator, stood near the stage looking like he might be sick himself. His face was pale, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. "I need to speak with all staff immediately, just for 1 minute." The servers gathered in a cluster near the kitchen. James looked at them with desperate eyes. "As some of you may have heard, our pianist has fallen ill. Food poisoning, apparently. I've called everyone I know and no one is available on such short notice." He ran his hand through his hair, completely ruining the neat style he'd had earlier. "If any of you know anyone, and I mean anyone, who can play piano at a professional level, I need to know right now. These guests paid good money and they're expecting world-class entertainment." The servers looked at each other. A few shook their heads. Someone suggested maybe playing recorded music instead. James looked like he wanted to cry at the suggestion. Maya's hands were shaking. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was crazy. This was absolutely insane. She was a server. These people didn't want to hear a server play piano. They wanted a professional, someone famous, someone with credentials and a reputation. But that piano was sitting there empty, and she knew she could do it. She'd played pieces far more difficult than anything on tonight's program during her morning sessions. She'd kept her skills sharp, specifically so she wouldn't lose what she'd worked so hard to build. Jenny nudged her. "You okay? You look weird." Maya took a deep breath. Her whole body felt electric. She thought about her father, about how he'd always told her that talent like hers was a gift that shouldn't be wasted. She thought about the scholarship she'd given up, the dreams she'd put on hold, the 3 years of being invisible. Maybe it was time to be seen. "James," she heard herself say. Her voice sounded strange, like it was coming from someone else. "I can play." The entire group turned to look at her. James blinked. "What?" "The piano. I can play it. I studied at the conservatory for 2 years before." She swallowed hard. "Before I had to leave. I've kept practicing. I can do this?" James stared at her like she'd just spoken in a foreign language. Several other servers were giving her looks that clearly said she'd lost her mind. Who did she think she was? This wasn't amateur hour. This was a room full of the city's wealthiest and most powerful people. But James was desperate, and desperate times called for desperate measures. "You're absolutely sure?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. Maya nodded, even though she felt like she might throw up. "I'm sure." James looked at Maya like he was trying to solve a puzzle. His eyes darted from her face to the piano and back again. She could practically see the thoughts racing through his mind. A waitress? Playing for 500 of the city's most important people? What if she was terrible? What if she embarrassed everyone? What if the guests demanded their money back? But then his phone buzzed, another pianist he'd called, turning him down. He closed his eyes and let out a long breath. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, we'll try it. But Maya, I need you to be honest with me right now. Can you really do this? Because if you get up there and freeze, or if you're not actually good enough, this whole event falls apart. These people don't forgive mistakes." Maya felt her stomach twist into knots. Part of her wanted to take it back, to say she'd been crazy to even suggest it. But another part of her, the part that woke up at 4:30 every morning just to play, knew she could do this. "I can do it," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. James nodded slowly. "You've got 15 minutes. Go to the staff room and, I don't know, pull yourself together. Wash your face. Do whatever you need to do. I'll make an announcement that there's been a slight change in tonight's program." Maya walked toward the staff room on legs that felt like rubber. Behind her, she could hear the other servers whispering. Some of them sounded excited. Others sounded worried. Jenny caught up with her halfway down the hallway. "Are you seriously doing this?" Jenny grabbed her arm. "Maya, those people out there, they're not like us. If you mess up, they'll tear you apart. Are you sure about this?" "No," Maya admitted. "I'm not sure about anything. But Jenny, you should see me play. Every morning I come in early and I practice on that piano. It's the only thing I have left from my old life. I'm good. I know I'm good." Jenny studied her face for a moment, then pulled her into a quick hug. "Then go show them what you've got. I'll be cheering for you." In the staff room, Maya caught sight of herself in the mirror. She looked exactly like what she was, a tired waitress at the end of a long shift. Her hair was pulled back in a simple bun. Her uniform was plain black and white. There was a small stain on her sleeve from where someone's soup had splashed earlier. This was really happening. In less than 15 minutes, she was going to walk out onto that stage in front of all those people who'd barely noticed her all night. They'd see her as a server trying to play dress-up. They'd think it was some kind of joke. Her hands were shaking as she washed her face with cold water. She stared at herself in the mirror and tried to remember who she used to be. Before the medical bills, before her father died, before she became invisible, she'd been someone once, someone with dreams and talent and a future that looked bright. That person was still in there somewhere. Tonight, maybe, just maybe, she could let that person out again. Maya took the pins out of her hair and let it fall around her shoulders. It wasn't much, but it was something. She straightened her uniform as best she could. Then she closed her eyes and did something she hadn't done in years. She visualized the music. Her old piano teacher had taught her this trick. Before any big performance, close your eyes and play the entire piece in your mind. See your fingers on the keys. Hear every note. Feel the emotion of the music. By the time you actually sit down to play, your body already knows what to do. Maya ran through the first piece in her head. A classical composition she'd been practicing for months. Then the second piece, something more modern and emotional. She could hear every note crystal clear in her mind. A knock on the door made her jump. "Maya, it's time." James's voice sounded strained. She walked back to the ballroom on shaky legs. The server's entrance was at the side, but tonight, she'd have to walk through the main doors like a guest. Like someone who mattered. James was waiting for her near the entrance. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Worry, maybe, or hope. Possibly both. "Listen," he said quickly. "I told them we have a special surprise performer tonight. I didn't mention that you're staff. Not because I'm ashamed, but because these people, they judge. Let's just let the music speak for itself first, okay?" Maya nodded. Her throat was too tight to speak. "One more thing," James added. "Whatever happens out there, thank you for trying." No one else even had the guts to offer. Then he was gone, walking toward the stage to make the announcement. Maya stood in the shadows near the door, her heart beating so fast she felt dizzy. She could see the guests from here. They were back at their tables now, finishing dessert and chatting. A woman in a red dress was laughing loudly at something. A group of men near the front were on their phones, barely paying attention. They looked bored. They were expecting someone famous, someone worthy of their time and money. They were about to get a waitress instead. "Ladies and gentlemen," James's voice came through the speakers. "Thank you all for your patience. I'm pleased to announce that tonight we have a very special performer. Someone with extraordinary talent who has graciously agreed to step in at the last moment. Please welcome to the stage our surprise guest." The applause was polite but unenthusiastic. These people clapped for everything. It didn't mean anything. Maya's feet started moving before her brain could tell them to stop. She walked through the main doors, across the ballroom floor toward the stage. Every step felt like it took forever. She was aware of eyes turning toward her, confused whispers starting up. "Isn't that our waitress? Why is she going to the stage? Is this some kind of joke?" Maya's cheeks burned, but she kept walking, one foot in front of the other. "Don't look at them. Just get to the piano." The stage lights were bright, blinding almost. She climbed the 3 steps carefully, her practical work shoes quiet against the wood. And there it was, the Steinway. Her piano, the one she'd played 1,000 times in secret. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it slightly. The room was still buzzing with confused conversation. She could feel the skepticism in the air like a heavy fog. These people had paid hundreds of dollars to be here. They wanted a professional, a name they could drop at their next dinner party. Instead, they got the woman who'd been refilling their water glasses all night. Maya's hands hovered over the keys. This was it. The moment that would either change everything or confirm that she'd been foolish to ever hope for more than what she had. She took one deep breath. Then another. She blocked out the whispers, the doubt, the stares. She thought about her father, about how proud he'd been when she got into the conservatory. She thought about all those early mornings practicing in the empty ballroom, keeping her dream alive even when it seemed pointless. And then she began to play. The first notes rang out clear and strong, A classical piece by one of the old masters. Technically complex but emotionally powerful. Her fingers moved across the keys with the confidence of someone who'd played this piece 100 times. Because she had, the whisper stopped almost immediately. The confusion turned to surprise. Maya didn't see any of it. Her eyes were closed now. She was lost in the music, in the only place she'd ever truly felt at home. She was finally, after 3 long years, no longer invisible. The music filled every corner of the ballroom. Each note was crystal clear, precise, exactly where it needed to be. Maya's fingers moved faster now, dancing across the keys like they'd been born to do this. And in a way they had. She could feel it happening. That magical thing that only happens when the music is right, when everything else fades away and there's nothing left but the sound and the feeling and the pure joy of playing. Her shoulders relaxed. Her breathing steadied. This wasn't the Rothmore Hotel anymore. This wasn't a room full of wealthy strangers judging her. This was just her and the piano, the way it had been every morning for 3 years. In the audience, something shifted. The man who'd been checking his phone slowly lowered it to the table. The woman in the red dress stopped mid-conversation, her mouth slightly open. At a table near the back, an elderly gentleman leaned forward in his seat, his eyes wide. "My God," someone whispered. "She's incredible." The piece Maya was playing was difficult. Really difficult. The kind of composition that took years of training to master. Her left hand moved in complex patterns while her right hand carried the melody. They worked together in perfect harmony, creating layers of sound that built and built until the entire room seemed to vibrate with the music. Jenny stood near the kitchen doors with the other servers, her hand pressed over her mouth. She'd known Maya could play, but this was something else entirely. This was the kind of talent you saw in concert halls, not in hotel ballrooms. Not from someone wearing a waitress uniform. Maya transitioned into the second movement. The tempo changed, becoming softer, more delicate. This part required incredible control. Too soft and the notes would disappear. Too hard and the emotional impact would be lost. Maya found the perfect balance. Her touch was light but sure, coaxing heartbreaking beauty from the instrument. A woman at table 7 felt tears prick her eyes. She didn't know why exactly. The music just hit something deep inside her. Something she'd forgotten was there. Next to her, her husband reached over and took her hand. He felt it too. The room was completely silent now except for the piano. 500 people, many of whom came to these events primarily to network and be seen, were actually listening. Really listening. Some had their eyes closed. Others watched Maya's hands move across the keys with fascination. A few people were recording on their phones, capturing this unexpected moment. At the back of the room, there was a man in a tailored navy suit sitting alone at a corner table. His name was Robert Chen, and he was one of the most successful music producers in the country. He'd come tonight as a favor to a friend, expecting to be bored out of his mind. He'd heard 1,000 pianists over his 40-year career. He could spot real talent in 3 notes. This girl had it. Whatever it was, she had it in spades. He pulled out his phone, but not to check emails or scroll through social media. He opened his notes app and started typing. This was too good to let slip away. Maya began the final movement. This was the part she loved most. The composition built to a crescendo, demanding everything the pianist had to give. Speed, power, precision, emotion, all of it at once. Her fingers flew across the keys almost faster than the eye could follow. The sound swelled, filling the room with a kind of beautiful intensity that made people hold their breath. And then, just when it seemed like the music couldn't get any bigger, any more powerful, Maya brought it back down. Soft again, gentle, like a storm that had passed, leaving only calm waters behind. The final notes hung in the air, delicate and pure, then silence. Complete and total silence. Maya lifted her hands from the keys. She opened her eyes, suddenly remembering where she was. The stage light seemed brighter now. Her heart was still racing from the performance. She'd gotten lost in the music the way she always did, but now reality came crashing back. She'd just played piano for 500 wealthy strangers while wearing her waitress uniform. What had she been thinking? She started to stand, ready to hurry off the stage and hide in the kitchen for the rest of her life. But then someone started clapping. Just one person at first, then another, and suddenly the entire room erupted. People were on their feet, applauding, some of them shouting. It wasn't the polite, obligatory applause from earlier. This was real. This was thunderous. Maya stood frozen on the stage, completely overwhelmed. She'd never experienced anything like this. Even during her conservatory days, she'd only played for small audiences of fellow students and teachers. Nothing like this. Never anything like this. The woman in the red dress was wiping tears from her cheeks as she clapped. The elderly gentleman was nodding his approval, a huge smile on his weathered face. People were turning to their neighbors, talking excitedly, gesturing toward the stage. "Who is she?" someone asked. "I don't know, but that was extraordinary. Did you get that on video? I need to share this." Jenny was jumping up and down near the kitchen, clapping so hard her hands hurt. The other servers were cheering too, their earlier doubts completely forgotten. Even James looked like he might cry. He'd taken a huge risk letting Maya play, and she'd delivered something beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Robert Chen was already on his feet, moving toward the stage. He'd been in this business long enough to know that moments like this were rare. You didn't let talent like this walk away. Maya managed a small bow, her legs shaking so badly she worried she might fall over. The applause continued. It felt like it went on forever, though in reality it was probably only a minute or two. To Maya, it felt like her entire life had led to this moment. All the practice, all the sacrifice, all those early mornings in an empty ballroom. It had all been worth it. As the applause finally began to die down, James rushed onto the stage. He looked completely different than he had 15 minutes ago. The panic was gone, replaced by pure joy and relief. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, his voice shaking with emotion, "I think we can all agree that was something truly special. Let's hear it one more time for our incredible pianist." The applause surged again. Maya felt her eyes filling with tears. She'd spent 3 years being invisible, and now suddenly everyone saw her, really saw her. But it wasn't just about being seen. It was about being heard, about sharing the one thing she loved most in the world and having people respond to it, about proving to herself that she hadn't lost who she was, even after everything that had happened. As she walked off the stage, her legs still wobbly, people reached out to shake her hand or touch her arm. They called out compliments and questions. Where had she trained? Where could they hear her play again? Was she performing anywhere else in the city? Maya smiled and nodded, too overwhelmed to form actual words. She made it to the side of the stage where Jenny pulled her into a tight hug. "You did it," Jenny whispered. "You actually did it. Maya, you were amazing." But before Maya could respond, a man in a navy suit approached. He had silver hair and kind eyes, and something about the way he carried himself suggested he was someone important. "Excuse me," Robert Chen said, pulling a business card from his pocket. "I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I couldn't let you leave without speaking to you. That performance was remarkable, truly remarkable. I'd very much like to talk with you about your future." Maya took the card with trembling fingers. She looked down at it and her heart nearly stopped. Robert Chen, president and founder. Chen Music Productions. She knew that name. Everyone in the music world knew that name. Her life had just changed forever. Maya stared at the business card in her hand like it might disappear if she blinked. Robert Chen. The Robert Chen. She'd read articles about him in music magazines during her conservatory days. He'd discovered some of the biggest names in classical music over the past 2 decades. And now he was standing in front of her, waiting for her to say something. I don't understand," she finally managed to get out. Her voice sounded small and far away. Robert smiled warmly. "It's quite simple, really. You have extraordinary talent, the kind I don't see very often even in my line of work. I'd like to discuss opportunities with you. Performances, recordings, perhaps even a tour. But first, I need to know your story. How does someone with your skill end up working as a server?" The question hit Maya harder than she expected. She felt her eyes sting with fresh tears. How did she end up here? The answer was complicated and painful, and not something she particularly wanted to share with a stranger, even one who could change her life. "It's a long story," she said quietly. "The best ones usually are." Robert pulled out his phone. "I'm in the city for the next 3 days. Could we meet for coffee tomorrow? Just to talk. No pressure, no obligations. I just want to understand who you are and what you want from your music." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Robert typed something into his phone, then looked back up at her. "Excellent. I'll have my assistant send you details in the morning." "And Maya?" He paused. "What you did tonight took real courage. Don't lose that." He shook her hand once more and disappeared back into the crowd. Maya stood there feeling like she was in some kind of dream. None of this felt real. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Guests kept approaching her, asking questions, requesting her contact information. One woman wanted to hire her to play at her daughter's wedding. A man offered her a spot at some exclusive music club downtown. Everyone had something to say, some opportunity to offer. James found her near the bar, looking completely overwhelmed by all the attention. "You doing okay?" he asked, though he was grinning from ear to ear. "Because I have to tell you, the charity organizers are thrilled. Apparently, 3 different people have already pledged additional donations because they were so moved by your performance. You basically doubled our take for the night." Maya felt a strange mix of pride and disbelief. "I just played piano." "No," James corrected her gently. "You did something special. Something people will remember." He hesitated, then continued. "Listen, I know this is probably the last thing on your mind right now, but we need to talk about your position here at the hotel." Maya's stomach dropped. Of course. She'd abandoned her tables to play piano. She'd probably left guests waiting for refills and desserts. She was going to get fired. After the best night of her life, she was about to lose her job. "I understand," she started to say, but James held up his hand. "I don't think you do. Maya, the hotel management wants to offer you a new position. We want you to be our resident pianist for special events. The pay would be significantly better than what you make now, and you'd actually be doing what you're clearly meant to do. What do you think?" Maya's mind went blank. A resident pianist? Playing music instead of serving tables? Getting paid for it? It seemed too good to be true. "But what about Robert Chen?" she asked. "He wants to meet tomorrow about performances and recordings and you should absolutely take that meeting," James said firmly. "But even if nothing comes of it immediately, you'd have this. A steady job doing what you love. And honestly, after tonight, I think we'd be lucky to have you." Maya felt tears threatening again. She'd cried more in the past hour than she had in months. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." By the time the event ended and the last guest filtered out, it was past midnight. Maya helped with some of the cleanup, though several other servers insisted she didn't have to. Jenny walked her to the employee exit, both of them exhausted but buzzing with energy. "I still can't believe that happened," Jenny said, shaking her head. "I mean, I knew you could play, but Maya, that was something else. You know it's already online, right? People were posting videos during your performance." Maya pulled out her phone. She rarely checked social media, but curiosity got the better of her. Jenny helped her search, and within seconds they found multiple videos of her performance. One had already been viewed thousands of times. The comments were overwhelming. "Who is this woman? This made me cry. So beautiful. The way she plays. You can feel every emotion. I need to know her name. This is incredible." There were hundreds of comments like that. Thousands. The videos were being shared across multiple platforms. Someone had even created a hashtag, Waitress Pianist. Maya read through the comments with shaking hands. These were complete strangers from all over the world, and they were moved by her music. They wanted to know who she was. They wanted to hear more. "You're going to be famous," Jenny said, her voice full of awe. "Maya, you're actually going to be famous." That night, Maya barely slept. She lay in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything that had happened. Every few minutes she'd check her phone and see more views, more comments, more shares. The videos were spreading faster than she could keep track of. At 3 a.m, she got an email. It was from Robert Chen's assistant, just like he'd promised. "Coffee tomorrow at 10. An address for a cafe in Midtown." Simple and straightforward, but there was something else too. Another email, this one from someone named Catherine Wright. The subject line read, "Symphony Audition Opportunity." Maya opened it with trembling fingers. "Dear Maya, my name is Catherine Wright, and I'm the artistic director for the City Symphony Orchestra. I was in attendance at tonight's charity gala, and your performance was absolutely stunning. We currently have an opening for a pianist, and I would love to have you audition. I understand this is short notice and you may have other commitments, but I felt compelled to reach out. Please let me know if you'd be interested. Best regards, Catherine." Maya read the email 3 times to make sure she wasn't imagining it. The City Symphony Orchestra, one of the most prestigious orchestras in the country. They wanted her to audition. She got out of bed and walked to her window. Outside, the city was mostly dark. Just a few scattered lights from late-night workers and early morning deliveries. This city where she'd been invisible for 3 years. Where she'd carried trays and forced smiles and slowly watched her dreams fade. But tonight something had shifted. Tonight she'd taken a chance. She'd been terrified and done it anyway. And now the world was opening up in ways she'd never imagined possible. Her phone buzzed again. Another email. Then another. People wanting to book her for events. A small record label asking if she'd be interested in recording an album. A music journalist requesting an interview. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. Maya thought about her father. About how he'd mortgaged their house to pay for her first piano. How he'd sat through every recital, every competition, every practice session, beaming with pride. How he'd told her, even at the end when he was so sick he could barely speak, that her music was a gift to the world. "I did it, Dad," she whispered to the empty room. "I finally did it." Tomorrow she'd meet with Robert Chen. She'd respond to Catherine Wright. She'd figure out how to navigate this sudden flood of opportunities. She'd probably make mistakes and face new challenges and have moments of doubt. But tonight she'd proven something to herself. She wasn't just a waitress who used to have dreams. She was a pianist who'd never really stopped being one. Even when the world tried to tell her otherwise, and that made all the difference. 6 months later, Maya stood backstage at the Rothmore Hotel once again. But everything was different now. She wasn't wearing a server's uniform. She was in an elegant navy blue dress, her hair styled professionally, her hands steady on the sheet music she'd been reviewing. Tonight was another charity gala, but this time her name was printed on the program. This time she was the main event. The journey to get here hadn't been easy. After that first viral night, everything had moved incredibly fast. The meeting with Robert Chen had led to an introduction with a talent manager. The audition with the City Symphony Orchestra had gone so well that Catherine Wright had offered her a position on the spot. Within 2 weeks, Maya had gone from unknown waitress to rising star in the classical music world. But success came with its own challenges. The symphony position required extensive rehearsals. Robert Chen wanted to record an album. The hotel wanted her to play regular events. Interview requests poured in daily. Everyone wanted a piece of her time, her story, her talent. There were nights when Maya collapsed into bed, exhausted, wondering if she'd made a mistake. The quiet simplicity of her old life sometimes seemed appealing compared to the constant pressure of her new one. But then she'd sit down at a piano and everything else would fade away. The music always reminded her why she'd taken this chance. The symphony performances had been incredible. Playing with a full orchestra, feeling the power of dozens of instruments combining with her piano, it was everything she'd dreamed of during those early morning practice sessions. The audiences loved her. Critics praised her technical skill and emotional depth. One reviewer called her a once-in-a-generation talent finally getting her moment. But tonight felt special in a different way. This was where it all started. This ballroom, this piano, this hotel where she'd spent 3 years being invisible. Jenny peeked backstage, now wearing her own server uniform as she worked the event. "There's a huge crowd out there," she said with a grin. "Sold out. Every single seat. People are standing in the back." "That's terrifying," Maya admitted, though she was smiling. "You'll be amazing. You always are." Jenny gave her a quick hug. "Oh, and guess what? Table 12 specifically requested me as their server. They said they wanted to be served by someone who was here the night everything changed. I'm basically famous by association now." Maya laughed. It felt good to laugh. Despite all the changes, Jenny had remained a constant friend. They still met for coffee once a week, and Jenny always kept Maya grounded when the pressure of her new life became too much. James appeared, looking far less stressed than he had that first night. "Ready? We're about to start," Maya nodded. She walked to the edge of the stage and peeked through the curtain. The ballroom was packed. She recognized several faces, some of the same wealthy guests from 6 months ago, curious to see how the waitress-turned-pianist had developed. But there were new faces, too. Music lovers who'd seen her videos online, symphony patrons who'd attended her performances, even a few music students from her old conservatory, including one of her former professors. In the front row sat Robert Chen, looking proud. Next to him was Catherine Wright from the symphony. And in the third row, wearing her best dress and clutching a program like it was precious, was Maya's mother. That was the moment that almost broke her composure. Her mother had worked so hard to give her opportunities when she was young. She'd been devastated when Maya had to leave the conservatory, even though she understood why. For years, she'd watched her daughter serve tables and pretend to be happy, and it had broken her heart. But now she was here, watching her daughter perform on a real stage, living the dream they'd both thought was lost forever. Maya took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. The applause was immediate and warm, not the confused, skeptical reaction from 6 months ago. This was an audience that knew who she was and had come specifically to hear her play. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Maya said into the microphone, her voice stronger than she felt. "6 months ago, I stood on this exact stage for the first time. I was terrified. I was a waitress who hadn't performed for anyone in 3 years. I had no idea what would happen." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. "What happened was that you gave me a chance. You listened. You shared my story. You opened doors I didn't even know existed. Tonight, I want to thank you for that. But I also want to thank someone else." Maya gestured to the side of the stage. "James, could you come out here for a moment?" James looked startled but walked onto the stage. He looked uncomfortable in the spotlight, which made Maya smile. This is James, the event coordinator who took a huge risk on a waitress who claimed she could play piano. He could have said no. He probably should have said no. But he didn't. And that decision changed my life. She turned to him. "Thank you for believing in me when you had absolutely no reason to." James looked like he might cry. The audience applauded warmly. He managed to mumble something about it being his pleasure before hurrying off stage, his cheeks red. Maya sat down at the piano, her piano, and placed her hands on the keys. "Tonight I'm going to play some pieces that are special to me. But I'm going to start with the same piece I played 6 months ago. The piece that started everything." The room fell silent. Maya closed her eyes and began to play. The familiar notes flowed from her fingers, but somehow they sounded different now. Richer, more confident. She'd played this piece hundreds of times, but tonight it felt like a celebration, a reminder of how far she'd come. As she played, Maya thought about her journey, about her father and the sacrifices he'd made, about the years of struggle and doubt, about that moment 6 months ago when she'd decided to take a chance instead of staying invisible. She thought about all the people who'd helped her along the way. Jenny's friendship, James's trust, Robert Chen's guidance, Catherine Wright's mentorship, her mother's unwavering support. The music swelled and filled the room. Maya poured everything into it. All her gratitude, all her joy, all her hope for the future. This wasn't just a performance. It was a thank you. To everyone who'd believed in her, and to herself for having the courage to believe in herself. When she finished the first piece, the applause was deafening. But Maya barely paused before moving into the next composition. She played for 90 minutes straight, moving through a carefully selected program that showcased her range and skill, classical pieces that demonstrated her technical mastery, modern compositions that showed her emotional depth, even a piece she'd composed herself during a late-night practice session last month. The final piece was something new, something she'd been working on for weeks specifically for tonight. It was a tribute to her father, incorporating melodies from songs he used to sing to her as a child. It was the most personal thing she'd ever played publicly, and as her fingers found the final notes, she felt tears streaming down her face. The audience was on their feet before the last note had fully faded. The applause seemed to shake the chandeliers. Maya stood and bowed, overwhelmed by the response. She saw her mother in the third row crying openly, pride written across every feature of her face. Later, after the performance, after the congratulations and the photos and the interviews, Maya found herself alone in the ballroom for a moment. The guests had moved to the reception area. The staff was beginning cleanup. It was quiet. She walked back to the piano and sat down, running her fingers gently across the keys without pressing them. This piano had been her secret sanctuary for 3 years, her only connection to the person she used to be and the dreams she'd thought were gone. "Thank you," she whispered to the instrument, to the room, to the universe that had somehow given her a second chance. Jenny found her there a few minutes later. "Hey, superstar. People are asking for you at the reception." Maya smiled and stood up. "Coming." As they walked toward the reception together, Jenny bumped her shoulder playfully. "So what's next? World tour? Recording contract? Maybe your own reality show?" Actually, Maya said, I'm starting something new next month. A music program for kids who can't afford lessons. Free instruction, free instruments, everything. I'm calling it the Second Chance Music Project. Jenny stopped walking and stared at her. Seriously? Seriously. I got lucky. Someone gave me a chance when I needed it most. Now I want to do the same for others. There are probably hundreds of talented kids out there who will never get the opportunity to develop their gifts because of money. I want to change that. Jenny pulled her into a tight hug. You're amazing, you know that? Maya hugged her back, feeling grateful for everything. For the music, for the opportunities, for the friends who'd stood by her, but mostly for that moment 6 months ago when she'd decided to stop being invisible. She'd stepped up to the piano when everyone expected her to fail. She'd played her heart out when she had every reason to be afraid, and in doing so, she'd discovered something important. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. Sometimes the scariest thing is letting your dreams die quietly instead of fighting for them loudly. Sometimes you have to show the world who you really are, even when it's terrifying. Maya had taken that risk, and it had changed everything. As she entered the reception and was immediately surrounded by well-wishers and admirers, Maya caught sight of her reflection in one of the ballroom mirrors. She looked different than she had 6 months ago. More confident, more alive, more herself. She was no longer the invisible waitress. She was Maya, the pianist, and this was only the beginning.